Hey guys, so this is my presentation on exit strategies. My name is Chris Cheever, and let's get right into it. So what is an exit strategy? What are exit strategies? Basically, it's most often used in the world of venture capital. It's essentially known as a liquidity event to venture capitalists, which basically means that they want to take their investments that aren't cash and form them into cash. They do this by selling off the company that they put their money in. Basically, as a rule of thumb, if you ever take investment capital, you will always need an exit, essentially due to pressure from investors. So they do this by holding on to something called preferred shares, which means they essentially have voting control over the company. What they say goes. If they want to sell off the company, if they want to get rid of the company, they have the ability to do that. Even if you are self-funded, you may want to exit at some point. It might be because it was your plan all along. It might be because of a number of different reasons, which I'll actually get into in a second. So why should you do it in the first place? Why should you exit a company? Why should you, sell it off? It might be because investors are demanding it. Because they have those preferred shares, if they want it done, it has to happen. So that's one reason. An additional one might be because you're out of money. You might be out of working capital. It happens all the time with game developers. So, that's not an uncommon thing. Greed. Like I said, maybe it was your plan all along. You made a company. You guys developed a number of different games that saw decent success, and now you want to sell it off to make some of your money back, or actually make more money. Definitely a strategy. Finally, upper management might demand it. This isn't as frequent or as common as the other three, but it might be because upper management is getting older. They want something for retirement, and this is the best strategy that they could do to keep everyone employed at a possible new buyer, and while helping themselves a little bit. So how is it done? How do you do it? The most common ways of exiting out of a company, or trying to get someone to buy your stuff, is go public. Do something called an IPO, which is an initial public offering, which is essentially when you put your company's stock up on the public market, the public stock exchange. There's definitely advantages and disadvantages to this. A major advantage is there's an extremely high degree of independence. Basically, you're taking all of the preferred shares that would be with your company and converting it into common shares. Basically, everyone has a voting say in the company at that point. You also have access to capital markets. Once you are public, it's a lot easier to raise capital by issuing additional shares. Granted, this is going to make the shares that are already held by shareholders a little bit less valuable. But if you ever need money, you can just say, oh, you got 1,000 more shares, throw it on the market, they get bought, you make some money. A rare strategy is the leveraged buyout, which is LBO. This is more or less when a company takes some debt out to basically buy your company, come in and restructure the crap out of it. They restructure possibly development, teams, management, everything. And this is all in hopes that that your company starts making money, that you start turning a profit, and then at that point they can take that profit and start paying off the debt, and then they just start making money once the debt's paid off. And then finally, and these are the things that you don't actually want to have happen, is just a general close down or bankruptcy, which I spelled incorrectly. It happens. You don't really want it to happen though. So preparing for your purchase, you need to actually do things before someone just comes in and buys your company, before an exit happens. Things that you want to keep in mind before the investor comes at you and says, "Listen, we want to sell off the company like next week." Obviously, you want to have some sort of idea as to what you need to do. So first, you need to figure out, what do you have that's valuable? How do you figure out what your worth is? Game developers, for the most part, aren't a public company. They don't have, like an IPO. So it's a little bit harder to figure out their typical worth. They don't have a typical predictable cash flow or profit. So this is challenging to say the least. So first of all, a way to figure out your value is your IPs. Did you make Tetris? Did you make COD? Did you make, Battlefield, Warcraft, StarCraft, any of that stuff? You're going to be worth a bunch of money. And this can kind of entail a couple things. It can entail specific rights to certain venues for that IP. So for instance, Bethesda right now owns the IP for Fallout. However, the original creator, Interplay Entertainment, they held on to the right to create the Fallout MMO. I don't know if that's still the case because I remember there was a little bit of a lawsuit between them, I think a couple years back, and I don't really know what came of that, but that's just like a little example. So the value of your back catalog and the future revenues it's likely to generate, if you're going to be creating DLC, add-ons, maybe even like just general merchandise like t-shirts and mugs and whatever, that can create money. So Skyrim came out years ago, and I'm sure if they were to release another add-on, another expansion for it, it would definitely make money. So that'd be a prime example right there. Games currently in development and their possible future value. You've done market research. There's hype. There's a community already built around it. That's value. You're making a prequel or a sequel to an already established series that has an already established fan base. That's value. Like, for instance, like Blizzard creating Diablo 4. That would be an extremely valuable thing, even though it's just in development. And then finally, the team. This is a little bit harder to put like a legitimate value on, but it's basically when it's the team is the best at what it does, and when it's going to be filling in roles that the purchasers' studios need. So if EA buys you and they need artists over at BioWare, and your team has a bunch of artists, you're going to be a little bit more valuable than a team that doesn't really have a lot of artists. You do a lot of, you maybe you send your artwork out to a third party. Also, team's best at what it does. Maybe you make World of Warcraft. Maybe the team is, Blizzard's World of Warcraft team. Obviously, World of Warcraft might not be the best MMO, but it is the most successful one. So, a lot of investors think that, that's the best at what it does. That's the best team at what it does. So, something else that you need to figure out if if no one outside of your company is helping you, like maybe your investor's not helping you figure out a buyer, and it's all up to you, you got to do your research. You can't just post it on Craigslist and say, hey, my company is ready for purchase. Someone help me out. You got to do your research. So you've been working in the game industry for a while now, most likely. I'm sure you have some networks that you can tap into and try to find a potential buyer. You can hit up all of those people that you've maybe come into contact with, other studios, possibly even publishers, and then, sell your game that way, or sell your firm that way. There might be also non-obvious candidates. This is typically done through a investor or venture capitalist. If you chose that route, they will, hit up people that they know that you possibly didn't have a connection to or hadn't even thought of yet. And then finally, trusted suggestions from trusted contacts. Again, it's another way of trying to get a different perspective on things, figuring out, routes or companies that you didn't even think of to begin with, who can, possibly come in and buy out your company. Something else that you really need to do before actually putting your offers out there and trying to find a buyer is increase your perceived value. You can do this through a number of different ways. First, secure your own IPs. If you've licensed them out, if you don't have them anymore, get them back. Anything to kind of bolster your game library, get it back. You got to beef up your pipeline, your game pipeline. I know, according to the book, this is what the book says. It says, consider embarking on a new, high-profile, early-stage development project even without funding. I think that sounds absolutely terrible. I think that sounds like a horrible idea. If you're basically like, it's essentially for smoke and mirrors. It's to create some sort of hype and some sort of conversation around your company. It definitely seems like it's a lot riskier than just hiring a PR agency. If you're looking to get your name out there, if you're looking to have like a household name, I don't know if I'd jump into something like creating the next World of Warcraft. for millions of dollars rather than just hiring a PR agency and trying to get your name out there for, you know, a less expensive game. Also, finally, get rid of obligations and problems. No one wants to buy a developer that has a crap ton of issues. No one wants to rent an apartment that has a leaking roof and rats. Get your stuff in order, and then people are going to be more likely to want to buy your company. So also preparing for life after purchase. There's a lot of things that you need to do and ask yourself and ask the purchaser before you actually okay these sort of exit strategies or okay the purchase. Basically, you know, you need to ask yourself, what's your personal objective? You know, what do you hope to gain from this sale? Are you simply looking to make as much money as possible? Do you plan on continuing to manage your own studio post-purchase? Are you hoping to maintain like some sort of executive position at, you know, your purchaser? Things like that. Things that you need to keep in mind, and then in turn you need to ask those questions to the purchaser. You need to figure out, you know, what's going to happen to, if, you know, you have shares in the company, which you probably do at that point. What's going to happen to my shares? You know, what's going to happen to the current team? What's going to happen to me? What's going to happen? Everything. Just, you know, figure everything out. Get all of the information that you need. Don't just okay, you know, the first purchase that comes on the table. Also, finally, you know, think of your employees. Do you want to keep them in the dark? Do you want to bring them in the process? Obviously, these hold advantages and disadvantages. Keeping them in the dark is going to be really hard, and it's going to start sketching out your employees when they see all of these business people coming and going from the office and jumping into the meeting room constantly. If you want to bring them in, you're going to be able to have another level of interactivity between the purchaser and the employees, figuring out if it's a good fit. You can figure out from them what they're looking for in a purchaser, but you know, that also runs risks because maybe they end up saying stuff that you don't really want them to the purchaser, and you know, creating some sort of bad image. And then finally, the hard exit, bankruptcy. First, you need to ask yourself, do you need to do bankruptcy? Do you need to file for bankruptcy? Or can you possibly do an orderly close down? Obviously, a close down is preferred. Literally, it's like closing down your company. Just like, we're out of money, guys. Peace. You know, if there's sufficient cash remaining, definitely preferred, but, you know, that's not always the way it goes. So if bankruptcy actually occurs, you need to avoid criminal charges. I know that sounds obvious, but it's not unheard of. If there's back taxes, unpaid employees, bills for, you know, legal paperwork to be filled out and filed, all that stuff, it all needs to be paid. If it's not, it's going to be liable. It's going to come back to you, and then, you know, you could get in some serious trouble for that kind of stuff. You should keep IP ownership in mind. Because your company is going bankrupt, you can't really sell your IPs, but there is a chance that you might be able to retain ownership of it. You might be able to, you know, get it personally, and if you can do that, that's definitely a good choice. Doesn't always happen, pretty unlikely, but, you know, there's always a chance. And then finally, maintain a good relationship with your coworkers. Don't be a dick. You might actually have to work with them later. You might want to work with them later. You know, they're valuable assets. I'm sure that you guys hopefully you guys had some decent ideas together, some, you know, commonalities, decent relationships. Try to maintain that, even though this whole process is going to be very, very difficult and very stressful. You know, always keep in mind that you're working with people. And that's it. That is exit strategies in a nutshell. So, hope you guys learned something.